Let's have a look at some of the stories making headlines over the past 7 days here in France. Political wrangling continues to cast a shadow over the French government's effort to pass next year's budget bill through Parliament. Things got a little rowdy during one session on Thursday. Some MPs had to be separated after pushing and shoving each other. In a major concession, Prime Minister Michel Barnier has abandoned the proposed hike in the electricity tax. That plan had been seen as a red line for the far right, which threatens to join the left in backing a vote of no confidence should he force the spending bill through without a vote. But as Laurent Berstecher explains, the latest move may not be enough to secure the government's survival.
Hoping to steer France's minority government out of a deepening political crisis, French Prime Minister Michel Barnier agreed Thursday to scrap plans for an unpopular electricity tax hike. Far-right National Rally leader Jordan Bardella welcomed the move, but warned Barnier only had a few days left to make even more concessions or risk the government's collapse. The Macron administration and the opposition have for weeks been locked in a tense standoff over proposed budget cuts, which the government says are necessary to bring down France's deficit, but which have been widely criticized by the left and the far right. France's left-wing parties, which were left out of the ruling coalition despite coming out on top in September's snap elections, said they would seek a motion of no confidence if Barnier tried to force the budget through.
Mr. Barnier met with the presidents of the Socialists, but rejected all their proposals. So if the government tries to force the budget through, there will be a no-confidence motion, and I will vote for it.
The far right, which now holds the key to the Prime Minister's survival, has sought to capitalize on this position of strength to wring out fresh concessions. It's threatened to support the motion of no confidence if the government didn't do more to curb immigration and lower taxes.
The impasse over the belt-tightening budget plan is throwing the country into financial turmoil. This week, France's borrowing costs reached the highest level in 12 years, with the risk premium on its 10-year sovereign bond briefly going above that of Greece. The gap between yields on French and German government bonds, a measure seen as reflecting investor confidence in Paris's ability to guarantee financial stability, also spiked. This could further weigh on the country's budget.
If we don't have a prime minister, if we don't have a budget, lack of confidence with regards to French debt will continue to rise. We'll find it harder to finance ourselves and we'll have to pay higher rates, so the burden of debt on the French budget will increase even further.
France is set to have its credit rating reassessed on Friday, with
Meanwhile, the far-right leader Marine Le Pen is also facing an uncertain political future as a high-stake misuse of funds trial against her wrapped up. Prosecutors are asking for an immediate 5-year ban on public office for Le Pen, which could have far-reaching political consequences. Le Pen has denied wrongdoing, calling the case politically motivated. A verdict is expected at the end of March. Charlotte Hughes has more.
It's a trial that could thwart Marine Le Pen's presidential ambitions. But as she left the courtroom after her lawyers made their final arguments, the leader of the far-right National Rally appeared optimistic.
I remain hopeful that we'll be heard with the different arguments that we were able to give. I've read analyses saying that this wait for a verdict could affect the political choices I have to take as the leader of my group in the National Assembly. So let me reassure you right away that this is completely false.
Le Pen and her party are accused of embezzling European Union funds. She and more than 20 other senior party members allegedly used money meant for work at the European Parliament in Strasbourg or Brussels to pay staff who were actually working on party business in France. Prosecutors are requesting a 5-year ban from public office for Le Pen and a 2-year prison sentence. She and her co-defendants have rejected the charges, insisting that the way they used the money was legitimate. Le Pen, who is widely viewed as the current frontrunner for the 2027 election, has also cast the trial as a political witch hunt.
I've said that this is a trial made by politicians for the sake of politics. I think this has become crystal clear.
A verdict is expected at the end of March next year. If Le Pen is convicted, judges could potentially deny prosecutors' request for a ban from public office to come into effect immediately.
Next to the mass rape trial that's been gripping the nation, prosecutors have demanded a maximum 20-year prison sentence for Dominique Pellicot, charged with enlisting dozens of strangers to rape his then-wife Giselle while she was drugged and unconscious. The 72-year-old has been on trial since September with 50 other men for organising the repeated rape and sexual abuse. After 3 days of closing arguments, the prosecution also requested heavy punishment for his co-defendants. Elitsa Gadeva has more.
Chants and applause as Giselle Pellicot arrived at court on Wednesday, in the latest stage of the mass rape trial that has shaken France. Lawyers for dozens of defendants began their closing arguments after prosecutors demanded lengthy jail terms for the suspects. The lawyer of the main defendant, Giselle Pellicot's husband, kicked off the final summations.
We all need to come out of this calm and collected. It's complicated, of course. I'm only a lawyer, I'm not the accused. But we have to keep working towards humane justice. Justice will be done, that's what we're here for. But it has to be done with understanding and serenity.
Dominique Pellicot has admitted to enlisting dozens of strangers to rape his wife while she was drugged and unconscious. Prosecutors have called for a maximum 20-year jail term for the 71-year-old who has been on trial with 50 other men. The other co-defendants face between 4 and 18 years of jail terms, a heavy punishment for some of the lawyers.
We started from a very high base, namely 10 years, and I would remind you that one of my clients, who was the subject of a request for 10 years, did not in any way penetrate Mrs. Giselle Pellicot, and as a result did absolutely nothing. However, the sentence is very high, which necessarily means that the others will receive enormous sentences.
The lead prosecutor told the court that their verdict will deliver a message of hope to the victims of sexual violence. Verdicts in the case are expected by December 20th.
France rolled out the red carpet this week for Nigerian President Bola Tinubu, who made the first state visit by the country's leader in 24 years. The two-day trip also signalled a shift in Paris's strategy on Africa after a series of military coups in its former colonies in the Western Sahel region reduced its influence on the continent. President Emmanuel Macron has sought to strengthen ties with English-speaking Africa, with visits to Nigeria, Ethiopia and South Africa over the past 6 years. Nigeria is a major oil producer and was France's largest trading partner in sub-Saharan Africa last year. Here's President Tinubu speaking at a meeting of the France-Nigeria Business Council held at the Élysée Palace on Thursday.
The France-Nigerian business role is so important, and trade and investment has been integral to this partnership. As discussed earlier on, we need to do more, promote more, invest more in very important areas.
5.5 years after a catastrophic fire destroyed its roof and spire and left its interior in smouldering ruins, Paris's iconic Notre Dame cathedral is reborn. Not only has it been fully restored, it has recovered its original Gothic glory with decades of crud and soot removed. Ahead of its reopening on December the 8th, President Macron toured the cathedral live on TV, praising the more than 1,000 craftspeople who have helped rebuild the beloved monument. Emily Boyle has more.
In a hall once covered in ashes, President Macron addressed a crowd of Notre Dame's workers.
The shock of the reopening will be, I believe, and I want to believe, as strong as that of the fire. But it will be a shock of hope.
The French president inspected the choir and chapel and was one of the first visitors to the mythical monument.
We have the feeling of rediscovering it.
The visit came only a few days before Notre Dame opens its doors to the public after 5 years of renovations.
The blaze of Notre Dame was a national wound, and you were its remedy. through will, through work, through commitment.
The so-called building site of the century cost more than 750 million euros and brought together some 250 companies and hundreds of experts.
For a stonemason to work on a cathedral like Notre Dame, at this level of commitment and craftsmanship, is extremely rare and very moving for us.
Notre Dame, which welcomed 12 million visitors in 2017, expects to receive up to 15 million after its unveiling. The world-famous cathedral will officially reopen its doors to visitors and worshippers from the 7th to the 8th of December.